When we first created the clan, I asked one of the level 50 members to give some of their extra gears over to one of the lower level members, only to find out that they didn't even have their sewing machine yet. It was then that I realized that level has very little to do with your progress in Payday Survival. It has a lot to do with how much you play the game, but being high level does not mean that you are advancing in the game. Rather, there are 4 main milestones in Payday Survival that you should be working towards if you want to advance in the game. Knowing these milestones will not only help you know what to focus on to get to the next level, but it will help you communicate with your clan where you are actually at in the game so they can help you reach that next level. When I shared these stages with my clan, it was amazing how quickly my clan members were able to help each other get to the advanced level. So the first stage is the baby beginner, or what we call a noob. This person has just started the game and they really don't have anything. When I was in this stage, there were times when I didn't even have enough rope to build a stone knife, and therefore struggled to complete a single player green zone because I didn't have enough food either. I got out of that stage within a day, but I remember what it felt like to be in that stage, and the struggle was real. The milestone for getting out of the baby beginner stage is when you research your first weapon, which is usually the baseball bat because they're so common in events. Usually by then you've built all of these workbenches and you've become pretty good at gathering wood, stone, and metal. If you want to skip the baseball bat, you can also get out of this stage by building the forge, which allows you to build the shovel. By this time, the green zones are a piece of cake, and by having the ability to craft a baseball bat or a shovel, getting the main loot chest in the yellow zone is something you should be able to do frequently and efficiently. This brings us to the second stage, which I would call a beginner. Now, I know many of you are going to resist that term because over 80% of you that are watching this video will be in this stage, and I know you don't like being called a beginner. But once you get to intermediate, you will realize that you were in fact a beginner. Beginners are really good at farming the yellow zone and PvP zones, and many of them are able to get the resources they need to do the red zones. But they aren't able to do the red zones efficiently because they can't craft what is needed to do the red zones. And if you can't craft something in Payday Survival, it means you have to pay for it at the shop or fight for it in the PvP zones, both of which can take a lot of time waiting for the right item to come, and the shop is of course very expensive. The way to get out of the beginner stage is to build a sewing machine and all of the workbenches and research required to get a machete. Some might argue that the ability to craft a combat knife will get you into intermediate play, which they might be right because the sewing machine is the bigger deal in this equation, but I told my clan members that they needed to be able to craft a machete to be considered intermediate, and I'd recommend you do the same. By having a sewing machine, you will be able to build a better backpack and a tier 3 chest, and you will notice that just having these two things alone will completely change how effective you are at farming the different zones. And by having the ability to craft a machete or a combat knife, you will quickly get to the point where you will always have a good weapon on hand, which is a game changer when you're farming the red zones every time you log onto the game. But the intermediate player still has a long way to go. I see a lot of intermediate players trading their resources like research and gears for some guns to go fight in the PvP zones. This breaks my heart because they are trading the very resources that would allow them to build their own guns for cheap if they just use their resources to get to advanced. Now, many of you might think that advanced requires a lot of grinding to get there, but that's not true. If you stay focused on what you need to accomplish, you will get there very quickly. I have a busy schedule and I was able to get to advanced within 12 days of starting the game, back when there wasn't even the option to spend money in the game. Now, during those 12 days, I almost never went to a PvP zone, which some of you may say that's not a fun way to play. But now I can craft the best items in the game for really cheap and go to the PvP zones and wreck shop, which I would argue is way more fun. So the first thing you want to do when you go for advanced is to try to get your armor manufactured. I'd recommend skipping as many workbenches as you can to get this. Just like the sewing machine, having the ability to craft a tactical backpack is a game changer. But just doing that doesn't get you to advanced yet. The way to qualify for being an advanced player, in my opinion, is to build at least one of every workbench in the game, have all 4 pieces of merc gear researched, and research everything needed to craft one of these 3 guns from scratch. When you get to this point, you will be able to do or get anything you want without much effort. You blow through 100 ammo killing deer just for fun? Who cares? You are super rich, or at least have the ability to get super rich quickly. Which brings us to the last stage of maxing out your research. You don't need to get maxed out to enjoy the game, and there are a lot of things that functionally you don't even need to research. But many of you, like me, will still feel the urge to do it anyways. I don't know the exact amount of research parts needed to max out, but I'd guess it's somewhere around 40 to 250,000 research parts. Around 20,000 of that research is just researching the different ammo options, which like I said, functionally you don't need all of these, but if you want to max out, you need a lot of research. If you want to get research fast, be sure to check out my video on the fastest way to get research. The last reason it's important to know which of these stages you are currently in is because players from different zones should approach farming zones in different ways. For example, a max player would never farm a red zone with anything less than a machete, because he will have dozens of machetes. In fact, a max player could use guns to farm the red zone and still gather more resources from those zones than they spend to farm them. But a beginner might not have any machetes and definitely shouldn't be spending their guns that way. I'll explain this more in my upcoming videos about farming the different zones. So keep these 5 stages in mind, because I will be referring to them in those videos to show how to farm those zones based on each stage. So it will be important for you to know which stage you are in. Well, that's it guys. Hope that helps. I'll see you next time.